This video will explain the truth behind every single character introduced in Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. From uncovering Doey the Doughman's hidden secrets to finding out just how Huggy Wuggy managed to survive, this is every theory I've constructed around the characters of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. And before the video begins, if you want to help out my channel, feel free to leave this video in the background while you do some chores, homework, or even while you go to sleep. That'd help me out a ton. But without further ado, here is every single Chapter 4 character's full story. Why did Doey the Doughman attack us at the end of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4? It's clear that throughout this chapter, Doey has been an extremely good ally, helping us escape Yarnaby and even trusting us enough to show us his safe haven. But near the end of Chapter 4, we see a brand new side of Doey that we've never seen before, both in personality and later in appearance. Not only do we have to end up defeating this version of Doey, but it almost feels like a completely different character. And that's because he is. To completely understand just how and why Doey the Doughman transformed into this monster and attacked us, the player, we need to go through who Doey is as a person. Or I guess I should say who he was before he became this toy. The very first moment we see Doey the Doughman is actually in the introduction to this chapter, in which we can only really see him in the form of an actual toy.
Doey the Doughman!
He's stretch you, he's gum you, he's squish you, he's fun you, D-O-E-Y.
Look at all the colors!
So many toys and one. Triple time the friend and triple time the fun. D-O-E-Y. Love until the day that you die.
Call the number on screen and order your Doey today. Order now while supplies last. Shipping and handling costs.
Until things start to distort and what was initially an advertisement then turns into something unexpected.
This one! I don't know, open this one!
We are introduced to this kid named Jack Ayers,
I knew it! This is the one I wanted!
receiving a Doey toy as a Christmas present. And inside of this toy, it seems Jack also found a ticket to tour the Playtime Factory.
We're going to the Playtime Factory?
That's right, honey.
From this ticket, it seems Playtime Co. had a system of hiding exclusive tickets to visit the factory in their toys, and that Jack was lucky enough to be chosen as a guest. We then cut to see Jack on his tour, in which he can be seen away from the rest of the tour group while visiting the dough mixing facility.
Jack, don't wander off. Stay right here with them. He's not listening to a thing I say, is he?
Not even a little bit.
Everything seems to be going well until tragedy strikes, and Jack trips and falls into one of the mixing tanks, dying in the pool of molten clay.
Everyone shut down the machine! Do you hear me? Somebody shut off that camera!
This is presumably the moment that Doey's bigger body was created, through Jack Ayers. But something that was made clear throughout this entire chapter is that Jack was not the only kid put into this bigger body. In fact, you can see through multiple different imagery that Doey has a total of 3 different children inside of him. In the initial introduction VHS tape, we see what looks like sort of a family photo with 3 different Doeys, 2 of them being happy and joyful, and the last one being extremely frustrated for some reason, which we will get into later. Not to mention Doey's design itself, showing 3 different arms reaching in towards him. What we do know from this is that Doey has 3 different personalities within him, and at certain times we see different kids take control of Doey, displayed by his different emotions. This could hint at how Doey became so aggravated towards the end of this chapter, but let's dive in a little deeper to fully understand why. Of course, Jack Ayers was the first of the 3 to be transformed into Doey, being named Experiment 1322A. We know from watching this initial tape that he is very likely to be the main Doey seen in the picture, as he was the first of the 3 to become this toy, and was presumably the leader of the 3 because of it. The next of the 3 children to be infused into Doey was Experiment 1322B, Kevin Barnes. We actually knew of Kevin Barnes from all the way back in Chapter 3, In a VHS tape Kevin was taking from Home Sweet Home to be experimented on and turned into Doey. In this VHS tape, Kevin's friend asks about his disappearance to only be reassured by a scientist that he'll be just fine.
Subject is stable. Designated 1322. Clear neural abnormalities were detected in his recent checkup. Though highly irregular, we've pulled him from the Home Sweet Home just before lights out to perform.
What are you doing with my friend?
What are you doing out of bed? How did you get in here?
Is Kevin sick? Why did you take him away?
Kevin is very sick. Very, very sick. But we want to make him better. But he can only get better if we take him to where we can provide proper care and give him proper rest.
Do you really think he will be okay?
I should think so. We're good at what we do, son. We paid attention in school, learned, and got our proper rest when we needed it. Just like you need it now, I should think. Come now, let's get you on back to bed.
But this isn't the only VHS tape we get of Kevin. Back to chapter 4, we get a VHS tape that seems to have been recorded right after the one in chapter 3. Here, we have the same scientist talking about Kevin's behavior in Home Sweet Home.
After a brief interruption, we've successfully extracted subject 1322, specifically 1322B from the Home Sweet Home. Before said interruption, I attempted to detail the subject's condition and overview the suitability of one Kevin Barnes in relation to Project Doey. The neural abnormalities noted in Dr. Newman's report are detailed in connection to behavioral issues demonstrated within play care. Trouble getting along with others, aggressive and often confrontational social tendencies, and an otherwise combative nature clearly relay that Kevin is, put simply, a problem child. What friends he does have, he's reported to have attacked in moments of intense play. These tendencies raise concerns. The subject excels in all physical tests. Reflexes, reaction time, and mental fortitude all tested well above average in game station examinations. So, in spite of said concerns, in Dr. Sawyer's eyes, Kevin is ideal for the project.
From what the scientist explains, Kevin seems to be a very aggressive and high-tempered kid. We can very easily link him to be the frustrated one of the 3 children seen in the family photo. But mysteriously, we don't have any information on this 3rd child. However, the Poppy Playtime Wiki says his name is Matthew Hallard and that his personality is kind and helpful, which does fill in that last Doey in the family picture being also seen with a smile on his face. So, these 3 kids were all put into a single toy, perhaps as a test in the Bigger Bodies initiative to see how many people can one single bigger body hold. And through some tapes, we can see that Doey's 2 kind and helpful sides are mainly dominant and lead the bigger body. This is what allowed the safe haven to become so thriving and work so well, because of Doey being led by his 2 more innocent personalities. In fact, in a VHS tape recorded during the Hour of Joy, we can actually hear Doey talk about how he's been getting really aggravated recently.
I'm not sure if this thingy is on, but I need to talk, and for the past few months, the fighting's been bad. Real bad. I've seen a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't. It's been hard to keep my head straight. The others, they look to me to know what to do, to know where to go. I could make for the exit. It's all I'd wanted for the longest time. But there are others inside. Others that aren't like me. They're hungry and scared like I am, but they're not me. They can't go where I can. They'd mean a lot to me. A lot more than I thought they did. And having seen what I have, knowing how they see me, how much they need me, I wanted to make this in case I ever doubt or forget that. Just play this and remember.
We can hear Doey making a tough decision, where he could completely escape the factory and be free from the tormented life he's lived, or stay back and help the rest of the toys survive as well. Doey most likely made this tape so that anytime he doubted himself with Kevin's anger, he could calm himself down, being able to look at the safe haven and see what he's accomplished. Everyone in the safe haven looks up to Doey, so that's probably what helped the two positive children overcome Kevin throughout this time. However, once the safe haven was destroyed, that mental wall of safety preventing Kevin from taking control was completely gone. And we can only watch as Doey's three minds fight over each other, and Doey eventually gives in to his anger.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I failed you. It was never what any of you needed. I was only made to hurt things. My fault. Hurt. Everything hurts. Hurt back. Always hurt back. Parents, scientists, everyone have to. My friends. He killed my friend. It all started with you.
So if that's why Doey was so angry at us, how come his appearance completely changed? I don't think Doey knows he's three kids in one body. I think he's more of a confused character who at times can randomly burst in anger, as seen in the tape taking during the Hour of Joy.
For the past few months, the fighting's been bad. Real bad.
He just doesn't really understand why he can't control his temper. The three children sort of serve as a metaphor to guide us through Doey's three past lives, and the trauma Kevin endured caused him to be a much more aggravated child. Because looking back, although we don't know much about Matthew, Jack lived a normal kid's life. He was a completely innocent kid with kind and caring parents, but Kevin lived as an orphan down in play care. He's had trauma, nightmares from the gas that Catnap inflicted onto the children, and because this gas affected him more than others, he was chosen by the scientists to be sacrificed into an experiment. So when Jack's extremely concerned parents came back months later to see what Jack had turned into, Kevin's rage overflowed. In this VHS tape, we can see that exact event take place. But Kevin, watching what could have been his own caring parents visiting him, enraged him more than ever, a starking reminder of what he never had.
Are you?
Jack? Honey, it's me. It's Mommy.
Mommy?
Yes. Yes! It's Mommy and Daddy. You remember, don't you?
Leave me alone.
Hey, you'll be okay, I promise. Mommy's only here to talk.
We can hear Jack and Matthew trying to calm Kevin down, but it's not enough to stop him.
The gentle voices lie. I know what they do. They lie, and they poke, and they hurt.
Susan, get away from it!
He completely takes control, and in full power, kills Jack's parents like it's nothing.
Jack? Mommy won't lie to you, Jackie. Mommy won't hurt you. I'd never hurt you.
Hey! Open this door! Oh, God. Susan! Please! Open the door! Please!
Kevin was clearly a threat to how Doey was going to continue living, but eventually, with due time, Jack and Matthew managed to regain control, and seemingly negotiate with Kevin, as we can see during Pianosaurus's death scene that the arms holding Pianosaurus are identical to that of Doey's monstrous appearance. By the time we arrive at the Playtime prison, Doey has learned to use his angered form as a way to fend off threats, and was also most likely how he managed to scare the prototype away when the safe haven was under attack. However, once the prototype manipulated us to gather all of his explosives and then used it to blow up the safe haven, everything is destroyed. All of the smiling critters taking refuge in there were now dead or missing, and Doey's entire reason to live, reason for staying rather than escaping all those years ago, was gone, and it was all for nothing. Although the two children do try to calm Kevin down, Kevin sees no reason to calm down. He's full of anger and drive to avenge all of his fallen friends, and eventually lashes out on us, just as he had on Jack's parents, turning into this monstrous amalgamation of all the anger and trauma of a kid who had his life taken away for a measly experience, chasing us down and ultimately dying because of it. What is the prototype planning? After Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 revealed that Ollie was the prototype, everyone in the community has been left with that same question. If the prototype has been helping and guiding us all the way to the prison, he clearly has something big planned. So what exactly is he plotting, and how can we use the answer to prepare ourselves for Chapter 5? Well, in order to fully understand what he's planning, I think it's very important to go through the prototype's full past and all the times that he has lied to and manipulated us to try and piece together what the biggest villain in the Poppy Playtime games wants from us. Experiment 1006, otherwise known as the prototype, was one of, if not the first experiments that Playtime Co. conducted in the Bigger Bodies initiative. What made the prototype special was the fact that he was noted to not need any food or substance to survive. This led Harley Sawyer, who was a normal human being at the time, to find extra interest in this experiment, as the prototype was evidently extremely clever and had high levels of intelligence. In Chapter 3, we find a VHS tape recorded during this time in which we can hear the prototype having a conversation with Harley Sawyer and can specifically note his ability to alter his voice.
There's a secret inside you, 1006, valuable beyond all measure. I cut and prod and burn at it, and I get closer with each session. So speak, or don't. Fight, or give in. Regardless, I learn something new about you every day.
Thank you.
You thank me?
Absolutely.
I learn something new about you every day.
What's very interesting about this is the clear rivalry between the prototype and Harley Sawyer. In Chapter 4, we are told that the doctor works for the prototype, while in this VHS tape, we can clearly see that at the time, it was the complete opposite case.
You stick us,
Beat us.
tear at flesh.
Do you feel it?
Nonetheless, the main importance to this is that it gave us reason to believe that anyone could be the prototype, and that we couldn't trust anybody. But anyways, in hindsight, seeing the big reveal that of all people, Ollie was the prototype, we should probably go over any time that the prototype used us to get what he wanted. And I'm gonna be honest, this reveal brings up a lot of questions, which we'll get into later. Ollie strangely introduces himself to us by letting us know that he doesn't want us to die, so he's going to help us out.
I don't want you to die, so I'm gonna help you.
But this can very easily be dismissed as a way for Ollie to befriend us so that we can trust him in the future. Moving on, Ollie lets us know that it's his and Poppy's mission to get us to the prototype so that we can defeat him.
I know you're probably mad at Poppy for not letting you escape, but she needs you. We need you. You are our mission.
This one's a little bit more evident. While Poppy probably wants us to get to the prototype so we can destroy the factory, the prototype most likely wants to lure us to him for the exact opposite reason. And he clearly doesn't want us to catch on to this, as there's this moment where he mentions the playhouse as being extremely scary.
But where to go next? Everywhere is pretty dangerous around here. That playhouse especially. Yuck!
However, I don't think he says this because of the Playhouse's dangerous threats. I think the main reason he wants to emphasize that we should be avoiding this area is because of Dog Day. Thinking about it, Dog Day is the one character introduced here who we know is an ally and can actually talk to us without his voice lines being questioned for lies. I mean, he's literally on his deathbed and he's been tortured by Catnap or maybe even the prototype. If he had absolutely any information on the prototype, you best believe he's going to be letting us know anything he can. Ollie, or the prototype, lied to us by telling us that this place is very scary to get us to avoid it, when, if anything, I found myself being more horrified at the missed light chase rather than the tiny little smiling critters. But anyways, between the Mr. Light Chase and Dog Day, we of course see Catnap worshipping the prototype, of which Ollie wastes no time to start talking about the second we get to speak to him.
Hey, did you see the shrine? Catnap made it for the prototype. In Catnap's eyes, the prototype is a superhero and has saved this place. So Catnap treats him like a god, killing everyone that opposes him.
Not only does Ollie make constant remarks to himself being a superhero and how he saved Catnap, but he also clearly knows the story of how Catnap came to worship him so much.
See, before Catnap turned into Catnap, I guess there was some pretty serious accident. He almost died, but they say that the prototype saved his life.
Looking back, there's so much evidence to support Ollie being the prototype, and many theorists thought this to be the case as well. But how does Ollie being the prototype and the prototype being in captivity to the Doctor tell us about his future plans? Well, let's take the Doctor first, because Ollie's position as the prototype has a little bit more to it. The main thing that confused me was how the prototype went from being encaged and tortured by Harley Sawyer to working with him. But when you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. As an experiment, the prototype was constantly tested on and tortured by scientists, and also by Harley Sawyer, who at the time, again, was a human. We can see in the VHS tape between the two that the prototype does not like Harley Sawyer, and most likely planned to overthrow him first as soon as he managed to escape. Following a fire incident in the Playtime Theater, in which Harley Sawyer died, or at least was badly injured, the prototype found this as the perfect opportunity to give this old enemy some karma, reviving Harley Sawyer by separating his main bodily functions apart and forcing him into working for the prototype. If not, he would die. Now, as for Ollie, this is where it truly gets interesting. Ollie in particular is interesting because he has a very close relationship to Poppy, and with the newfound knowledge that Ollie is Poppy's literal father, Elliot Ludwig, this gets really confusing. Take this VHS tape, for example, in which Poppy and Ollie have a conversation about Poppy's suffering while in her cage.
Poppy? Are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Are you feeling okay?
I'm okay, really.
Strangely, we can see Ollie very much cares for Poppy and believes in her. There's a big message being sent here of Ollie being very caring for Poppy.
I'm nothing now, Ollie. No one. I'm a thing. And nothing they can do to me hurts more than that.
You're not nothing to me. You're Poppy. And talking with you like this, here, Poppy. For you, I'll always be here.
The meaning behind this VHS tape is so clear. Mob Entertainment wanted us to see that the prototype, Poppy's father, knew that Poppy didn't agree with him, and didn't particularly like him either. So he initially used Ollie to get closer to Poppy, and form a better relationship with her without the problem of him being seen as the prototype. But skipping to the end of chapter 4, I think this is where the prototype realizes Poppy has flown too close to the sun. He needed to reveal himself to her here because it was so clear that she'd do anything to take him down. And by doing this, the prototype thought he could just simply put Poppy back into her cage and move on to facing us.
Ollie! 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 Something's gone horribly wrong. The safe haven...
Shelf ventilation block B6. Is this where you are, Poppy?
What?
Stay where you are.
And listen closely. You're not going to run. You're not going to fight. The charade is over.
How much do you know?
Everything.
Was there ever an Ollie?
Yes, there was.
But that was a very long time ago. Let me tell you what comes next.
I'm going to
come up there.
And I'm going to
find you. Your collaborators. The few you have left, they will be dealt with.
What are you going to do with me? Prototype. Please.
It's time to come home.
Poppy.
It's time to come home.
Can't go back in the case. I can't. I'm sorry.
Being thrown down into this new area, Chapter 5 is the only thing we can realistically think about. Poppy is clearly betrayed by this friend being so elusive, and the prototype obviously plans to earn her trust back. I mean, I personally think that the prototype will turn a new leaf to fix what he's done and reunite with his daughter. Looking at the evidence, I think this is a pretty easy assumption. How did Harley Sawyer go from being Playtime Co.'s smartest and leading scientist to becoming a robotic hive mind and controlling the Playtime Factory's prison? We all know that Harley Sawyer is the main antagonist of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. He watches us go through the entirety of the prison, sending dangers our way to test on how strong we were. But how exactly did he end up like this? From being the head director of the Bigger Bodies Initiative, how exactly did he end up getting experimented on himself? There's a big reason as to how and why he went from being a normal human being to this new robotic form. And in this video, we'll go over everything that led Harley Sawyer down this path of destruction, ultimately leading to his own downfall. To begin, let's go over everything we know about Harley Sawyer as a human. Harley Sawyer was the leading scientist in the Bigger Bodies Initiative. He joined Playtime Co. through the Young Geniuses program, and he's said to have been the one to introduce the idea of turning humans into toys, which shows his lack of empathy and care for human life. In this VHS tape found in Project Playtime, Harley Sawyer initially presents the idea of the Bigger Bodies Initiative. This would be the very moment that all of Playtime Co. would dissolve into corruption.
My name is Harley Sawyer. I'm called the Doctor. When I look at this company we've built, I do not feel proud. Declining profits, failed experiments, people are constantly seeing things they shouldn't. I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys. We can increase our workforce and simultaneously decrease the number of lawsuits and people on our payroll if the people we have working aren't people. Put me in charge of it, and I will save this company.
Harley Sawyer was very evidently good at his job. He was a madman, a scientist who managed to figure out how to literally turn a human into a living, breathing toy. And even after this, we can see a VHS tape in which Harley Sawyer meets with the first accomplished experiment of the Bigger Bodies Initiative, Foxy Boo.
Dr. Sawyer.
I wish to see him.
Of course, he's just...
And here you are. They said it was impossible, yet you defied all odds. The first of many, naturally. You have proven my Bigger Bodies Initiative a success. Many doors have opened today, thanks to you. Now, we need to start tailoring that appetite of yours to flesh. Where to start?
And this success would send Harley Sawyer down a deep rabbit hole of experimentation, leading to the creation of Huggy Wuggy, Mommy Longlegs, and presumably every single bigger body was created under the knowledge and guidance of Harley Sawyer. Sawyer found a way to put his evil mastermind to use, albeit at the expense of children from Playcare who were being used in the experiments to be turned into bigger bodies. And this went on for a while, until one fateful day in 1993. While at the Playtime Theater, Harley Sawyer was caught in the middle of a disaster. In a blazing fire that was set off in the theater, over 60 people were killed. In a VHS tape found in Chapter 4, we can hear a contamination team cleaning up the bodies in the aftermath, and suspecting that someone in the higher-ups of Playtime Co. set the theater on fire to try and kill Harley Sawyer.
Jeez. Hard to imagine how the company will duck all this under the rug.
You ask me? The culprit's obvious. Just needs to be spelled out plain and clear for the bigwigs.
You think?
Yeah. Rotten eggs come from rotten chickens, you know? Can't get more rotten a chicken than him.
I don't know. Just seems too careless that a guy so smart wouldn't cover his ass.
Hope Foxy's still hungry.
Got another
60.
However, Harley Sawyer managed to survive while being immensely injured, which was both good and bad news for the Playtime Co. employees. After the events of this incident, which we can tell from this VHS tape was not only a fire, but also included toys eating up visitors.
Because I guarantee it won't be so easy to toss a new coat of paint over 60 visitors dead, or the dozen reconstruction specialists who went swimming in the bellies of those things.
I'm sure that's taken care of already.
After the events of this fire, all the higher-ups gathered together to discuss what they would do with a now injured Harley Sawyer.
This recklessness has to stop. The doctor has no regard for the safety of this facility or its staff.
Or the children in Playcare. I've tried to set boundaries with him. He doesn't listen to me.
Playtime may have turned a corner financially, but that doesn't change the fact that his Bigger Bodies initiative is still a money hole.
The guy's gotta go, Lathan.
And how do you suggest we do that?
This wouldn't be the first time we made someone disappear.
One of them suggests that they finish the job and kill Sawyer. However, whether the team liked it or not, Harley Sawyer held way too much valuable information on how the bigger bodies worked.
We can't kill him, Eddie.
Why not?
Because like it or not, we need him.
Eddie's right, though. Sawyer can't keep leading this project.
Right. And all of that pales in comparison to the theater incident.
I don't even want to talk about that.
So, we can't kill the son of a bitch, but we need to knock him out of the equation. What do we do?
There is one thing I can think of.
With all the knowledge that the doctor had, they couldn't kill him. For example, at this point, it had been 20 years that he had been training Yarnaby to work by his side. There was clear reason to believe that he had connections to nearly every bigger body in the factory. To kill him would be leaving the rest of these people to figure out things on their own. Clearly, they couldn't let Harley Sawyer roam the factory, continuing to torment both the kids in Playcare and the Playtime employees. So, in a last-ditch effort to knock two birds out with one stone, they came up with the ultimate plan. Using Harley Sawyer's own notes and studies on how bigger bodies work, they would dissect him, separating his main body parts that keep him living into different tanks, all being connected through an electrical server. With this, they could still communicate with Sawyer without him going around doing any more antics in the factory. This is mainly where Harley Sawyer became what is now known as the Doctor. We can even see the exact moment that the Doctor initially gets booted up for the first time in the Doctor's own trailer for Chapter 4.
Where am I?
As the Doctor is being booted up, there are many images that we see flashing through as if his memory is being booted up as well.
What is this? Wrong. This is wrong.
And that brings us to the full present time, where we come in and take down Harley Sawyer for good by going one by one and unplugging his vital organs from any power source, shutting him offline forever. So there you have it, the full story of Harley Sawyer, and just how and why he turned into what we now know as the Doctor. But to be honest, I don't think our story with Harley Sawyer is over just yet. Harley Sawyer is still alive. Even though we watch as the Doctor is destroyed in Chapter 4, with all of his robotic henchmen shutting down around us, there's still a ton of evidence pointing towards him still being alive, and possibly returning in the next chapter. So I've spent the last few hours finding every single piece of evidence and clues into how and why Harley Sawyer could still be alive. So let's go over all the different theories and pieces of evidence that point towards the Doctor's return. The Doctor is the main antagonist of the newest Poppy Playtime chapter. He's known to be this robotic-like madman connected through all of the Playtime security cameras and serving as a warden for the Playtime prison. He ended up this way because of his past as a very intelligent yet also very chaotic scientist whose experiments were so insane and so vastly horrifying that he became a very valuable asset to Playtime while being a huge threat to the company as well. Considering his reckless behavior, this led the head of innovation at Playtime Co., Leith Pierre, to devise a plan, separating Harley Sawyer into a living and digital form by having his main organs kept locked away in containment tanks, while his mind was transferred into being purely digital. While this does give Harley Sawyer a huge disadvantage, as he is completely torn apart, with his lungs, liver, and brain being separated, and his only form of consciousness being electronic, this also is the main reason that we can suspect that he may still be alive. We know Harley Sawyer to be a very smart and innovative scientist. He's the one who created the idea and found the method of turning humans into toys through the Bigger Bodies Initiative.
I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys.
He's incredibly smart and finds many ways to keep himself busy, as we can see from the hundreds of henchmen that we have to face before ultimately shutting down the final body part. Playtime Co.'s idea towards keeping Harley Sawyer in this electronic state would make no sense for them to supply him with these robots, therefore giving him a physical body. So it's clear that these robots were built after the events of the Hour of Joy, which is when all of the employees either ran from the factory or were killed trying to escape. Yet, Harley Sawyer being left in this electronic state still wouldn't make sense as to how he managed to build anything, considering he doesn't have anything physical to build with, like hands for example. Which is why I suspect that Harley Sawyer worked with the prototype to construct him a main physical form that he could use to build future henchmen. This theory of him working with the prototype will come in handy later in this video, but the main point I'm trying to make here is that Harley Sawyer's intelligence is not something to underestimate. So, knowing that, why would he have been dumb enough to let us get to the point of unplugging his life support? Through the Mob Entertainment The Story So Far series, we can see that Harley Sawyer has been watching us all the way since Chapter 1. He's watched us through security cameras, take down Huggy, take down Mommy Longlegs, Mr. Light, Catnap, and even then, Yarnaby. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots and realize that the Doctor was next on the chopping block. Yet, in a way, he kind of lets us kill him. In this scene, for example, we are being forced to kill a nightmare critter in exchange for being let out. In this case, Harley Sawyer could easily send one of his many henchmen to go and kill us. We are fully cornered and have no escape. But instead, once we kill Simon Smoke, he keeps his promise and lets us move on to the next step. I know from a gameplay perspective this makes sense, but Harley Sawyer's entire character trait is that he's always one step ahead of us. He's been watching our every move, so the fact that he let us waltz in and kill him feels a little bit intentional. It's almost as if Harley Sawyer didn't even die here in the first place. And to be honest, the game does a very bad job at hiding the fact that he's still alive. When we finally shut down and destroy his brain, the final organ left, we watch all of his henchmen shut down seemingly for good. We done it. The machine's fully off, the henchmen are dead, and all of the power is out. And then, the Doctor says his final words.
You saved no one.
But this shouldn't make any sense at all. The Doctor is fully disconnected from everything. Even though it seems like he's giving us his final message, his words, "You save no one," kind of feels like a way for him to let us know that what we had just accomplished meant truly nothing. Being unplugged here didn't even matter to him. It might have been painful to watch these parts unplugged, but the sheer fact that he was able to talk to us after being fully disconnected kind of proves that he's still lurking in the factory somewhere. But how? To understand how he's still alive, let's go back into what we were discussing before, about the prototype helping the Doctor build him a physical body. Now, the prototype and Harley Sawyer have had a big roller coaster of ups and downs with each other. When we first enter Chapter 4, we are told by Doey that Harley Sawyer works for the prototype.
They call him the Doctor, Dr. Harley Sawyer. He was the scientist in charge of creating us. We don't know what he is, how he's still alive, but he works with the prototype.
However, back in Chapter 3, we can actually find a tape in which the prototype and Harley Sawyer are seen to be talking with each other. All the while, the prototype is being encaged and tortured for the Doctor's experiments. It's strange to see them today collaborating with one another, but taking a look at the circumstances the Doctor was in, he had no choice but to turn to the prototype to help. If this is all true, the prototype obviously built him his own physical body, capable of constructing any other future robots needed. This sort of ultra form of the Doctor is one we've seen before, but for some reason, we've never seen it in the actual game, but instead in the trailers. Before the release of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, there were 2 trailers released that showed us the first looks we ever got of Harley Sawyer. In total, we got 4 different shots, showing us how Harley Sawyer will be presented in the games. But of these 4 shots, 2 of those ended up in the actual game, being this cutscene in which we originally meet the Doctor, and this shot where one of his henchmen traps us into falling down a chute. But all this is to say that we clearly have a ton of Harley Sawyer footage that was never shown in the actual game. Many people in the community have brought this up, and the overall answer that people have been assuming is that these were just cinematic shots for the trailer, and that we shouldn't expect 100% of the trailer to be in the game. However, while this is a fair assumption, this shot, for example, was in the gameplay trailer for the chapter. The main point of a gameplay trailer is to show the customer what they will see in the actual game, and by taking a look at the shot that was specifically left out, we can see the Doctor in a physical form that is clearly different from the rest. Presumably, this is the body that was constructed to be fit for anything that Harley Sawyer needed, but to assume that this is like any other computer head body would be completely wrong, since it's been shown in not only 1, but 2 trailers. The other one being a trailer specifically dedicated towards Harley Sawyer, in which we watch as he is booted up, leading to the same main body standing in a crowd of TVs, opening its eye at us. I think this trailer was the moment that the prototype and Harley Sawyer finally managed to connect him to his body, and with this new physical form, Harley Sawyer could do practically anything. And it's all thanks to the prototype. So that solves why they're working together. But how are we supposed to draw a connection between this and the question on whether Harley Sawyer is alive or not? Well, the main evidence we can take out of this trailer is that Harley Sawyer obviously has his new body, and connecting all of the pieces of evidence, from the fact that he's a very smart guy to the fact that he's able to talk even after dying to us, my assumption here is that he's found a way to copy his mental consciousness and paste it into this ultimate body form. Many theorists who have made this connection have been comparing the Doctor to Springtrap from Five Nights at Freddy's. In Five Nights at Freddy's, Springtrap was a mad scientist who found a way to turn kids into Remnant, allowing him to bring life to these animatronics. A very similar case to Harley Sawyer's, in which he's also a mad scientist who managed to turn kids from play care into his own experiments, and ultimately being turned into toys. The connections between the two is uncanny, and to be fair, this wouldn't have been the first time we've seen a connection between the characters in Poppy Playtime and Five Nights at Freddy's. An obvious example of this is Doey the Doughman having 3 kids in him, being linked to Golden Freddy, who canonically has 2 kids trapped together as well. However, the reason for this connection between the Doctor and Springtrap being so important is through what happens to Springtrap in the Five Nights at Freddy's games. In Pizzeria Simulator, he's burnt and killed, seemingly for good. However, later on in Help Wanted, we see Springtrap come back in his own digital form, showing that he had created a copy of himself in case of any future emergencies. By taking what we already have linked between these two characters, it's very safe to assume that this is the case for Harley Sawyer. While it is a stretch to assume that just because they have some differences, they must be similar in all senses, by taking all of the evidence and clues that we've linked to this, we can safely assume that this is the case. Plus, seeing as how he's already electronic, it's very possible that his main body is being saved for the big reveal in Chapter 5, in which he will come back and shock us all, proving himself as the Doctor we all know him to be. But let me know what you think about this down in the comments. How is Huggy Wuggy still alive? The big reveal of Chapter 4 was that we'd be starting Chapter 5 with a good old chase sequence just like we had all the way back in the first game over 4 years ago. But the elephant in the room here is the big question of how this guy managed to survive and end up down here with us. Well, at the end of Poppy Playtime Chapter 1, after getting chased by Huggy Wuggy through the vents, we knock him off of our platform, sending him to fall to his death. Now, this was presumably the moment that Huggy Wuggy died, and at the time most of the community believed exactly that. But for the longest time, there have been some believers in the community saying that Huggy Wuggy could still be alive. Seeing it now being proven true, it's a big payoff for those theorists. But what exactly led them to believe he survived in the first place? Actually, the debate of Huggy Wuggy's survival has been an ongoing battle in the community ever since we watched him fall. And the main evidence for his survival was actually pretty convincing. In Chapter 2, we enter a room in which we can construct our very own Bunzo Bunny. It's a very easy room to forget about for casual players, but for those lore hunters who believed of Huggy's survival, this room is perhaps the most important piece of evidence. Because looking through this room, we can find scraps of blue fur and patches of blood, a clear indicator that Huggy Wuggy had been here recently. Although some people thought this detail was a way to show that Huggy's body just fell through this area, leaving some evidence behind, many theorists in the community thought this had to mean something deeper. That Huggy didn't just fall through this area, but instead climbed out of this room looking for revenge. This is the pillar of hope that provides evidence for Huggy's survival. It's as if the devs purposefully wanted us to hold on to that hope that this beloved villain might have a return. On top of this evidence, what led people to believe Huggy Wuggy might have survived was the fact that there has been a consistent flow of references to him throughout the last 3 chapters. In Chapter 2, we obviously have the Whack-a-Huggy minigame, and in Chapter 3, we see a Huggy cutout and have a very strange nightmare sequence where we get chased down a hall by Huggy, eventually leading to our death. And then there's the obvious. Realistically, since Mob Entertainment has had Huggy as the face of the Poppy Playtime series for so long, the fact that he survived was bound to be true. At some point, they had to bring him back, but at the time, some people still had their doubts. A post from Bandicoot OK 6855 read, "I see a lot of people saying, oh, but Huggy might be alive, blah blah. He's not. Let's look at this." After the first fall onto the railing, Huggy is motionless, showing that the first much lighter fall knocked everything out of him. Then he continues to fall down, hitting several objects down the way. Him surviving this alone is unlikely. However, Lapis Lazuli is the best has his own take on Reddit. Poppy said, "We killed Huggy." People have said that this confirms Huggy is dead, simply because it wouldn't make sense from a narrative point to have Poppy say this. But it does. It could just be a red herring, something that a storyteller uses to make the audience believe a certain thing. Both of these arguments hold really strong points, but let's be honest, we've already seen that Huggy lived. So the big question is how? How did Huggy Wuggy manage to survive a fall from the very entrance of the factory, past the game station, past Playcare, past the prison, and all the way down here? Well, what if I told you that the answer was he didn't? That's right, Huggy Wuggy actually died in his fall. It's a crazy take, I know, but just listen to my evidence and you might just change your mind. First, let's address the big flaw in what I'm saying. If Huggy Wuggy died, how is he right in front of us at the end of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4? Well, I think what happened here is that right after Huggy landed all the way down in the prototype's home, he was actually healed and brought back to life by the prototype. My main reason for assuming this is actually because of one Discord message sent by Zach Belanger. Belanger? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anyways, he's the Mob Entertainment CEO. Quote, prototype equals Palpatine and Huggy equals Darth Vader. Now, this message holds so much value to the theory because of its implications. If you don't know much about Star Wars, what Zach is actually referencing here is the fact that in Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi chops off Anakin, or otherwise known as Darth Vader's, legs, leaving him there to die. I think in this case, we are Obi-Wan Kenobi and Huggy Wuggy is Anakin. However, after being left to die, Palpatine appears, showing up to the rescue and helping Anakin survive the attack. By comparing this to the game, it's very clear what is being referenced. This is definitely hinting at the fact that Huggy survived by being healed and resurrected by the prototype. By looking at his appearance, we can see that's very likely the case. It's unlikely that Huggy managed to patch himself up without help. You can literally see here that his guts are hanging completely out, only being held together by some bandages. Someone, presumably the prototype, helped Huggy Wuggy survive so that he could eventually get his sweet revenge. Because one thing is definitely certain, if we do start Chapter 5 in this predicament, it's not going to be easy to survive this time. Huggy Wuggy is not going to hold back at all, which makes me think that the only true way we survive this encounter is by having Kissy Missy come to save us. If you really think about it, a fight between two bigger bodies has really never been seen before, and this fight would honestly be pretty evenly matched. They've both been through hell. Kissy Missy surviving an anonymous attack, and Huggy Wuggy surviving such a great fall. And on top of this, they both only have one arm, making this fight completely fair. If Kissy Missy does come to the rescue, I think this could be an insane way to start off the 5th and possibly final chapter. And if this theory is right, this could open a whole lot of possibilities for other past villains. I mean, who's to say that the prototype didn't just take the body parts he needed from Catnap, and just like he would have done with Huggy, perhaps he revived him under his complete control. I mean, we already know that Catnap worshipped the prototype, so this would be a really smart way for the prototype to gain full unconditional control of nearly any toy in the factory. For all we know, we could be facing every villain we have in the past combined in a single chapter. Tell me that wouldn't be an insane plot twist. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. What we do know for a fact is that once we spawn into this world of the Playtime Factory, we are going to face possibly the fiercest and most unstoppable force to be seen in the Poppy Playtime series. Even if Kissy Missy does come down to help, it's safe to say that this fight is not gonna be one that's easy to survive, because Huggy Wuggy definitely wants his revenge. What happened to the rest of the smiling critters? Recently, we've gotten a ton of more clues and hints towards what happened to them, from a VHS tape featuring Hoppy Hopscotch to notes in the orientation notebook revealing details about the rest of the crew and what eventually happened to them. I've spent the last few days gathering every piece of evidence and clues I could find to solve which of the smiling critters are still alive. So let's go over each of the smiling critters' notes and voice lines to eventually find out how they died and if they're still alive. Bubba Bubbafant, for example, is described in the orientation notebook as the smart and intelligent one of the group who has a very good memory. Actually, this is specifically called out in the notebook as he's alluded to know things that people really don't want to be reminded of. This could be something to do with the Hour of Joy, or perhaps he has the ability to fully remember who he was before being turned into this toy in Chapter 3. So reminding other toys who they were might not sound very appealing. In Chapter 3, his cardboard cutout begins to scream as soon as he tries to let us know what he remembers about us.
I'm Bubba Bubbafant. Hey, I remember you. Want to know what I remember about you?
Now Now this is very eerie, and it's important to note that his screaming could be indicating his death. Although this sounds pretty obvious, this simple indication will help us possibly determine who could still be alive, as there are some smiling critters whose voice lines never show any signs of death or screaming. For example, Bobby Bearhug's voice lines are more of despair and loneliness, and also never include any screaming. Her voice lines express that she wants to let us know just how much she loves us.
Hi, I'm Bobby Bearhug. Want to know how much I love you?
Towards the end of her voice lines, however, it seems like she doesn't want us to leave her.
I'm lost without you. I've been lost a long time. Please, take me with you this time. You won't leave me, will you?
And that's exactly how her voice lines end. No suffering, no screaming, nothing. But there's a much deeper meaning to the fact that we never hear anything further from her. In the orientation notebook, we actually have a report on Bobby Bearhug's Bigger Bodies Initiative experiment. It seems like Bobby was actually one of the first smiling critters to be turned into a bigger body. As the note reads, work will need to be done to perfect the bigger body formula we began with Boxy. Each iteration improves on the former. However, if we're able to meet the good of Dr. Sawyer and produce bigger bodies that we can integrate into a factory setting, then more work needs to be done. This note was made to detail the experimentation on Bobby Bearhug. The reason that she is described to need more work so that they can perfect the bigger body formula is because of the way that Bobby Bearhug started acting when she was first created as a bigger body. In the same page, we get a report on her behavior as soon as she was first created. Quote, several hours after awakening, she tried to stand up and walk to the other side of the cell, but couldn't keep her balance. She looks to be searching for help, continuing to spasm. She's trying to scream, but has no voice. She's silent. I'm not sure if she knows she's making any sound. This one is an extremely sad description of Bobby Bearhug, not only because of her loss of balance, but also because of her inability to speak or scream, which only brings us more questions towards her survival. If we didn't hear any screams from her cutout, is it because she's still alive and never faced anything overly violent to be included in these cutouts? Or is it because she was never able to scream in the first place? And by looking back at the entirety of her voice lines, it seems the note, I'm not sure if she knows she's making any sound, is shown here, as the way she speaks kind of sounds like she's trying to get a reaction out of us, to see if we can hear her, all to let us know that she's been lonely for a very long time. Perhaps this is hinting at the fact that she was the first of the smiling critters to be created, or perhaps there's something more. In the orientation notebook, we see a sketch of Bobby Bearhug, presumably made to represent how she was acting in the description that was provided. We can see that she's laid down, as her lack of balance doesn't let her stand up, and the walls around her kind of look like that of a cell, similar to the ones that we find in Chapter 4. Not to mention that in her description, Bobby is literally noted to be locked in a cell. Perhaps if Bobby Bearhug is still alive, we could end up returning to the prison and finding her locked away. All that's to say that even though we don't have much information on these smiling critters, the little information that we do have is very important and can be used to find key points as to what happened to these critters. For example, Picky Piggy's case is pretty straightforward. Her character is described as, well, picky. She's the one in the group to be very focused on food and eating up as much as she desires. Her voice lines mirrors this perfectly, eating anything she comes across.
Hi there, I'm Picky Piggy. Let's eat. Roast beef, delicious. Grilled chicken, down the hatch. Seared elephant, yum. Played unicorn, mmm.
And eventually turning to us for a food source.
Still hungry. Hey, what do you say you and I be friends?
So what does this mean for Picky Piggy? Well, we know in Chapter 4 that in the safe haven, all the characters are trying to change their diet to tailor less towards flesh and more towards safe and normal foods. However, it's highly unlikely that if Picky Piggy was ever a part of the safe haven, that she would follow these rules, as she's known to eat anything and everything that she can get her hands on. Possibly Picky Piggy might have ended up starving from eating so much of anything that she could get her hands on that she eventually ran out of food and starved. We know there's a shortage of food and flesh for the toys in the Playtime Factory to eat from the fact that Doey's first voice line when meeting us is,
"Now Dad hit the spot. I haven't eaten in weeks."
So although this points to the fact that toys can obviously survive for a long time without eating, I think it's still a possibility that Picky Piggy might have ran out of food and eventually starved. So at least for Picky Piggy, her survival is not really confirmed. However, let's look at someone who we basically do have confirmed is dead. Kickin' Chicken. Kickin' Chicken is described as being the cool kid of the crew, able to push through anything life throws at him. However, his voice lines are quite a curveball. What's going on here is pretty confusing. I think what might have happened to Kickin' Chicken is clearly going outside, wherever outside may be, led to his death. Perhaps during the Hour of Joy, Kickin' Chicken tried escaping the factory to find a chance at freedom, only to be caught and killed by the humans on the outside. As soon as Kickin' Chicken's cardboard seems to step outside, all we can hear are his final screams.
Hey, I'm Kickin' Chicken! Wanna go outside and hang out? I've never been outside before. Will you come with me? I'm scared. Here, follow me. I'll step out first.
We barely have any other information on Kickin' Chicken, so this is all we can assume for now. So let's move on to a more obvious story, Dog Day. Dog Day is described to be the main leader of the Smiling Critters. If any one of the Smiling Critters ever feel down, he'll always be there to cheer them up. This directly relates to the same Dog Day that we find in the Playhouse, as even in the situation he's in, with his legs completely cut off, he still manages to see the bright side of things.
You're Pappy's angel. Come save us.
Clearly, his leadership and ability to see the bright side is a main factor to how he survived up until this point. Even though his legs were cut off, he still manages to keep it together. But by actually taking a look at what he says to us, the line, "You've come to save us," kind of indicates that there might be some Smiling Critters still lurking who Dog Day is hoping that we'll eventually find and save. This could be referencing Bobby Bear Hug, or maybe even confirming that Picky Piggy is still alive, just desperately looking for food. Although we never see Dog Day actually die, the fact that he gets taken over by the mini Smiling Critters makes it safe to assume that he's permanently gone, and the mini critters have fully taken over. However, recently we found the newest evidence towards the Smiling Critters story, Poppy Hopscotch. Poppy Hopscotch was found in a VHS tape in Chapter 4, as well as a note detailing where she might be now. But before we do go into detail on that, let's go over her cardboard cutouts voice lines, so that we can safely compare the two pieces of evidence.
I'm Hoppy Hopscotch! Wanna try hopping to the moon with me? 1, 2, 3! Heh, didn't get very far, did we? Again! 1, 2, 3! Nope. Still didn't make it. 1, 2... No! Don't look at your feet! None of that matters! Again! Jump!
Although she does have this glitching effect at the end, it isn't an exact scream. We aren't sure off of the voice lines whether she survived or not, so moving on to the Chapter 4 clues, we might be able to find a clearer answer. The VHS tape covers a scene in which Hoppy Hopscotch, the medic toy, and Doey the Doughman are all tending to a broken toy after an emergency happened around the safe haven.
I need some help here! Hey, watch the door! Watch the door!
Right here. On the mattress.
There you go, bud. You're okay. Okay! Look at me! I'm a mess!
Poppy? What's going on?
We were trying to bring supplies back up to the elevator, but we got jumped. Had to turn all the way back around.
They took everything we had, right after one of them picked my leg!
How is he, Doc?
Not too bad. He'll live.
See?
Keep bite clean. Could get infected otherwise.
So, what do we do now?
For starters, you two stay here tonight. Let things settle down outside. I'll find more food for you to bring up to play care. When you're ready.
Thanks, Doey. Sorry we lost the supplies. It won't happen again.
The important thing is you're both okay. Aside from that bite, that is. Hey, Doc, let me grab some wound cream for our pal here.
Poppy explains that when they were out searching for supplies, out by the elevator, they were jumped, and all of their supplies were stolen. But what exactly even happened to Hoppy Hopscotch? If she was in the safe haven with Doey, where is she now? Well, that's where the note we find in Chapter 4 comes in. There's a note found in Chapter 4 in which we can find very blurrily scribbled in the back, "Lost Hoppy today. We're heartbroken. Trying to find the right," when the note is unfortunately cut off. What we can assume is that whatever attacked them on their last trip ended up coming back for more. It must have been impossible for her to outrun this threat, eventually dying to it while trying to escape. Finally, we have Crafty Corn. Unfortunately, Crafty Corn is the smiling critter to have the least amount of information on her. What we do know is that she's the creative artist of the smiling critters, which is shown in her cardboard cutouts voice lines, in which she's painting something.
Hi, I'm Crafty Corn. Can you help me with my painting? Pass me the blue, please. Now, can you give me some red? More red, please. Out? But we can't be out. You're hiding more red from me. I know you are. Give it here!
Her constant begging for red eventually leads to her corrupt screaming, which could indicate that she became obsessed with blood or flesh, or perhaps became addicted to the red smoke Catnap breathes, ultimately making her walk right into Catnap's grasp, where she was ultimately killed. And there is the story and lore behind every smiling critter there is. As for Catnap, I don't really think he counts as a smiling critter, since he was taken off the main crew and is clearly separated from the rest. But let me know down in the comments which of these critters you think is still alive, and if you think we might end up meeting them in the next chapter. Hey, you made it to the end of my Poppy Playtime movie. If you've made it this far, you've probably enjoyed my content, so subscribing would be awesome. It's completely free, and it helps me out a ton. Thank you so much for watching.